Thank you very much for everyone who is still here. I don't know if yeah, that's me. There may be my slides somewhere. Infinite loop. Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for having me here today. So what I will try to do, I will, well, we are not a DSI project, so I represent Gero.ai. We are a longevity biotech, and we have been supported by VitaDAO, so we are looking at this community with great interest. We're also working with VitaDAO since recently. We have a very interesting project on reproductive health, where we are putting, I think, to a good use our AI platform to identify targets, not necessarily only against aging, but also against other diseases. So what I will try to do very shortly today is to maybe entertain you and challenge you, maybe intellectually, with a few ideas that somehow show that maybe the future of DSI and longevity are very much together. So I'll start from the observation that in the 60s, and I think you still remember these ideas, that people were afraid of overpopulation on our planet. And it was predicted that exactly on November 13th in 2026, there will be an infinite number of people living on our planet. So in 2025, it's clear that this is not the case. So what actually happened is that people stopped producing new people. So the birth rates dropped a lot, and there is a gentleman in Texas who is trying to solve this problem alone these days, and the mortality also dropped along with the birth rates, which means that people are now living longer, but also there are not enough kids. So there is a challenge with that, is that since people are living a lot longer, now we have a lot more diseases, and suddenly you can see this in the revenues of pharma companies. So pharma companies are not very happy with chronic diseases, drug discovery against chronic diseases, because it's long and expensive. But at the same time, in a funny way, they learned, essentially in a hard way, that the drugs that are dealing with major age-related diseases, like Keytruda, for example, and Ozempic, are now earning a lot, like GLP-1 inhibitors market is now $50 billion plus. And this actually brings this drug discovery on the scale that is sufficient to get tech giants interested. So biotech is becoming tech in this way. So there are estimates that if people develop a drug that will extend human life just by a few years, this company may be worth more than a typical pharma company right now. And if you're looking at the sales of GLP-1 receptor agonists, you would see that this is not like a far-fetched idea. So basically it tells you that, well, we know, for example, that Eli Lilly, who is selling this kind of drugs, has just set up a huge venture fund, and Mark Andreessen will be running it. So I think this shows you a very good, this must give you a very good idea that there is a revolution that I think is going in pharma right now. I mean, they are still running around and saying that they are not interested in aging, but after creating GLP-1 market, I think they are. They're not just telling. So obviously the way people seen this before, and of course the longevity biotech exists, and over the last 20 years I think the whole industry was dominated with this idea of hallmarks of aging, to the point that I think they seeded like 10 companies against every hallmark of aging so far. So I think more than $20 billion were spent in companies that are attacking individual hallmarks of aging. And I would say that to this point, we don't see any good example of a drug that actually extends human lifespan. There are, I think, very fundamental reasons to that. And last year, we made a public debate with Aubrey de Grey, where I kind of insisted that most of human aging, unfortunately, is not reversible, which means that you have to do something else rather than trying to reverse symptoms of aging in order to help humans live long. This can be seen, I think, from the recent combinatorial intervention trial that was run by Aubrey de Grey in mice, where he essentially tried to use all kinds of known interventions against aging at the same time in the same group of animals. And he found that nothing actually works, so that the solid blue is the control, and the solid red is the rapamycin. And you can see that almost nothing works better than rapamycin. So this is what you get for like maybe 20 years of trials. Like Matt Chamberlain, professor, recently put it, nothing beats eating less, unfortunately. That still is a problem. We can do a lot better than this, in fact. I like to show this example of these naked mole rats. These are mice-like creatures that live actually like a few thousands of years. And what's most important is that humans age. So this is, on this graph, you can see our probability to die as a function of age. It's going up exponentially and doubles every 8 years. And for these little guys, pretty guys, you can see that their chances to die does not go up. These guys are kind of not aging, right? So this is called negligible senescence. So in a way, I think that in order to create a drug that will extend human life by a lot, you have to understand what is biology of this mortality acceleration. And I will show you in a moment that we have, I think, now enough ideas how to modulate this factor. So this is the only way how to make humans live a lot longer. So how can you do that? And I think what's most important now is that you cannot learn how not to die soon from an animal that lives only 2 years. So most of the things that we know about aging comes from little animals like nematodes, roundworms, even yeasts, which are technically even not animals, they are mushrooms. Which means that in order to study how humans age, and humans are very successful agers, by the way. We live 100 years. It's not enough for some of us, but really, we are one of the best in our class, best-in-class agers among mammals. So what is important is to understand how people are aging or not aging. You have to look at people. And fortunately, just in the last few years, humans became the most studied animal on Earth. We have maybe 500 million people with electronic medical records now in digitalized form. Tens of millions of people are genotyped, which means that you can actually look at this data and try to reverse engineer with machine learning how people age. How does aging look in humans from the inside? So a few years ago, we started with a small UK biobank, which is like 500,000 electronic medical records. We got to work with Pfizer. They gave us 10 million electronic, but they gave us more, but only 10 millions of them were of sufficient quality. And now with other pharma partners, we're getting a lot more electronic medical records to feed the machine learning algorithms and try to sort out which things, which diseases interact with other diseases and how they together interact with aging and what, at the end of the day, defines the rate of aging in our species. I think maybe that was too fast. Yeah, good. So I'll skip the long story short. From the data that we see, and now we see lots of data, I think that you can technically create 3 different kinds of longevity interventions. And I think it's important just to get the idea what these interventions can do. So what we call like level 1 interventions are those typical interventions against hallmarks of aging. These things can rejuvenate mice. They can rejuvenate a little bit humans, but the effects are very small. So these are your typical drugs against age-related diseases, and GLP-1 is like the demo version of level 1 interventions. GLP-1 modulators are the drugs that were developed against diabetes and obesity, and these guys are actually decreasing chances to die from lots of different other diseases. So this is probably the first demonstration of an anti-aging drug existing so far. So most of longevity startups are working here because here you have a very specific indication. And the challenge here is that metabolic disorder can take out maybe 8 years of your life if it's developed early. But so that's why many longevity companies are mutating now into metabolic disease company. But the problem is that this is at most 10 years of life, which means that, the whole this category of drugs will produce a lot of effect in metabolically compromised patients, but it will not produce a lot of effect on humans' lifespan. The models are telling that, and I will show some data at the end, that the animal data, that there is another kind of drugs that will be developed, I think, very soon with existing technologies that will bring the average lifespan of humans to the maximum lifespan. So that basically will change the lifespan from 80 years to 100 years. And that's a lot more than you can get by curing diabetes or cancer or anything else. So I think this work has been done now by quite a number of groups, and this will this will define, I think, longevity field in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years. And then there is something more speculative. There should be drugs that should be able to extend maximum human lifespan, which is about 120 years. But for that, you have to produce technologies that do not exist at this time. People are working on organ replacement, things like this. I think this will have a lot more time to go. So to the D-Science conference, I think what is important is that these dynamics, this rise of aging, this silver tsunami, produces very interesting effect on the market of pharmacological, on the biotech market. So 10 years ago, if I would tell you that you can sell a target with biological validation for millions of dollars, I think this would, nobody would believe you. So now, pharma companies having their best drugs going off patent. So Ozempic will be off patent soon, which means that in order to keep earning, these guys will have to develop better drugs than Ozempic, and that's extremely hard. That's why they're very hungry for new biology. And what happens now is that like Biotech is having a collaboration where they're getting 20 million upfront for target discovery. And Silicon Medicine is having collaborations where they are getting tens of millions of dollars and eventually milestones and royalties for target discovery. Our company is now making, it will be announced soon, a deal where they are paying us lots of whatever buybacks with an upfront there and promise royalties from drug discovery against the target that was identified by machine learning platform, and that is very intrinsically related to aging. So basically, pharma is ready to consume level 1 drugs. And I think what is important maybe for decentralized science community is that this gives you a kind of, not even the exit, but it gives you the revenue a lot earlier than the actual drug is going through the clinical trials. You can think about this kind of money. If any of decentralized science companies will produce this kind of a deal, I think this will be a great validation, and you don't need to wait 10 years in order to show that. What's more interesting that if you spend another $3 to $5 million, you can get deals that have like tens of millions in first upfronts and substantial milestones and royalties. This kind of brings in a way, pharma is going early in the food chain because they need more biology and challenging biology. And biotechs are moving up in the food chain, and they're meeting now at a lot earlier point. And I think this is very interesting because pharma knows how to develop drugs, pharma knows how to do clinical trials, and biotechs can be more specialized. And for example, I think there is a place for biotechs which are studying human biology from human data and identify targets with human evidence or initial drug discovery against novel targets that are involved in aging and age-related diseases. So that's why I think it's kind of the best time for startups or biotech companies that are specializing in human biology. And just to give you a preview before I finish, I will tell you how the level 2 drug may look like and how to translate it. I told you that we are looking for ways how to change the rate of aging, how to change the mortality rate acceleration in humans or in other animals. And this is actual data, but not from mice, but from dogs. This is the chances to die for these animals. This is like log plot, so that's why the straight lines here are actually exponents. And you can identify biological factors that are changing the slope of these curves. So you can really identify the biology that controls the rate of mortality acceleration. And as you can see in these blue dots, in the blue cohort, there is a huge mortality deficit early in life, meaning that these guys are living a lot longer because they are missing mortality early on. So these are longer-lived animals than mice. You cannot study these things in mice, but you can study them in dogs. You can actually sell drugs to dogs because it's a huge market. And that's, I think, is the only way to translate such a drug eventually to humans. This is a demonstration of a level 2 drug that we are kind of focusing on. We are studying that in dogs. And I think, well, eventually, or quite soon, these drugs will be tried in humans. So to finish the story, I will tell you that the times of low-hanging fruits in longevity biotech are over, right? So with the clinical trials published recently of rapamycin, which shows very small effect, and with emergence of GLP-1 modulators that are generating a lot of money and apparently extend life in humans, there is almost no room left for companies that are trying to achieve 3 to 5 years of lifespan modification. Which means that the opportunities are lying in technologies that are at least promising a lot better increase in lifespan, meaning that we have to focus on drugs that fundamentally affect aging. And this is not a pipe dream anymore, because once pharma companies extend life by 3 to 5 years by metabolic drugs, they will start seeking for even more earnings. And the problem is now, it's not like they are not interesting. They are not impressed with the effect sizes that we are providing. So that's why I think, and especially for decentralized science community, the challenge is to provide that new biology that at least promises those larger effect sizes so that pharma companies will eventually acquire it. So we are probably one of the leading teams in that direction. So we are already showing some data, and I think there will be competition there. Look, people will live 30 to 40 years longer. a lot earlier than people think. And I think that's the most impactful technology that you can create in a few years from now. So if anyone is interested, there is a way to contact us. We are easily Googleable, findable, and hopefully fundable eventually too. And well, happy to answer any questions later.